Here. Okay. Looks like we're going live. So, woohoo, we're live. Excellent. Well, again, so thank you guys for taking the time to do this. I know it's a little bit of a bumpy start. We're trying to reinvigorate this. This is something I started right after I got here and joined the organization. And then we kind of put it on pause for a variety of other reasons. With the new school year, I wanted to try to reinvigorate this. And rather than do this as an open forum, do it more as a panel structure. And so thank you guys for being my first panel as we try the new structure and the new format. So the intent here, just to give a little bit of context, is every so often, every couple of weeks, once a month, whatever that may be, is we're going to pick a topic and get a panel together. And you are certainly welcome to participate in future panels. But the intent here is to get a panel together and then just have a free-flowing discussion around various topics. And so today's topic that we thought we'd start off with, just given we're going into a new academic year, is what brotherhood mean to you? And so that'll be our topic for the day. And just as a matter of introduction, joining us on our panel is we've got three members. Mandi Dilling, who's the Director of Education and Leadership at Beta Theta Pi Fraternity. So welcome, Mandi. Jason Allen, who's Phi Phi's Director of Member Development. And Marc Dumas, who is a chapter advisor for Phi Kappa Psi at both DePaul and UIC. So welcome, Marc, and thank you all again for joining us today. So it's interesting. I know I've been in my role now for about 6 months. We were talking about this just before we started broadcasting. Brotherhood or sisterhood, for that matter, are words that are thrown around the Greek community a lot. But when you really think about it, it's like, what does that really mean, and why is it important? What really makes somebody being a brother or sister any different than being a good friend? And for some of us who are a little older, aka me, having grown up in kind of the Animal House era, obviously things have changed quite substantially from when that movie came out, whenever that was, in the late 70s, early 80s. And so it's, unfortunately, I find, though, a lot of people still have that in the back of their mindset. When I tell people I'm the executive director of a national, Greek organization and a fraternity, they're like, oh, so you guys party a lot, right? It's like, well, unfortunately, that reputation still hangs over all of us, and I think sororities probably have a similar challenge that they're battling through. And so I thought it'd be really fun today to just kind of kick things off with this series and the new academic year to talk a little bit about brotherhood or sisterhood and how that goes. And so really want this to be a free-flowing dialogue, but I will try to get things started with a few questions here. And so, Marc, I'd actually like to start with you and just ask you, just from your perspective, what is brotherhood to you, and why is it important?
So brotherhood's really important because it's more than just being a good friend. I've got friends. I've got lots of friends. I only have so many brothers. Well, actually, I have a lot of brothers too. I'm blessed that way. But it's an accountability thing. It's a, someone said it best. I'm not necessarily my brother's keeper, but I'm my brother's brother, meaning that I have to you're responsible for holding me accountable and me holding you accountable to help you get better. Not all your friends are always trying to help you get better. I mean, you hope they are, but realistically, some of them are just friends because you like the same baseball team, or you like the same beer, or your kids go to school together, or whatever it might be. As you get older, your friends come from a lot of different places. You work together, but you really don't have an accountability to them past that little, really small niche of the world. With my brothers, I expect them to hold me to a higher standard. I tell my undergrads all the time, when you sign up for this, that's what you sign up for. You sign up to be better. You signed up to not just walk through college for 4 or 5 or 6 years just hanging out. You signed up to be better than you could ever think you would want to be.
Yep, and I think that's a great point, Mark, and I like the key word that you seem to latch onto, and I think I'm a big believer of it as well, is really around accountability, and I think that's really important. And I'm curious, Mandi, from your perspective, again, not only are you a member of the staff of another Greek fraternal organization, but I believe you're also a former sorority lady with Tri Sigma, I believe. How is this similar or different from the concept of sisterhood, and does that concept of accountability carry through to the sorority world as well?
Great question, Mark. I think it certainly is very similar. I think maybe the approach is different. The way that men approach brotherhood is different than the way that women approach sisterhood. But all in all, we're really talking about the same foundation, the same principles. Accountability, I would add loyalty as well, are really key to making brotherhood and sisterhood function well. In my, Mark referenced friends from, where your kids go to school and those types of things, friends you make in your adult life. And I don't expect those friends to be around forever. I expect them to be around for a season. But my sisters, I expect to be around forever because we have more bonds. We have stronger bonds that were formed in formative years for us as we were growing into adulthood. And so those relationships I expect to change as my sisters have children and I do not have children, and as I grow in my career and they grow in other ways, I expect us to grow together. Whereas I might meet somebody who volunteers with an organization I love to volunteer for, and I kind of expect those to be more fluid relationships.
Got it. Great perspective, and thank you for that. Jason, from your perspective, any thoughts on brotherhood in general, and then maybe just from a member development, putting a member development hat on, why are discussions about brotherhood, important? Not only the one we're just having here, but amongst our younger members, our undergraduate members, and why is it important for them to get to know that? And are any things that they could do to help bring those conversations forward so that some of these key elements, around loyalty and accountability, actually come through and are heard more than just once, and it's not just lip service, but it's something they actually live.
Yeah, I think from a member development perspective, when I think about member development, I think it's a person's first interaction that they have with a member of Phi Kappa Psi, whether that's at a recruitment event or in a class, until they pass away. So member development is your entire life. And I think the easiest way to continue those conversations around brotherhood is to talk about ritual. Ritual is the one thing that ties us all together. You have your friends, and you could have common values, and there could be some really great values conversations there. But when we think about brotherhood, right, ritual is that one thing that ties us all together. I can see someone in letters in an airport, and I know that they were initiated based on the same values that I hold, the same principles there. So I think oftentimes our members, and members in any Greek organization, don't spend enough time focusing on ritual, revisiting that during a chapter meeting or during a brotherhood night. Because again, that's that one common bond that can keep it going. I think we're all looking for different things from a brotherhood. We could be looking for an extended family. We could be looking for someone to hold us accountable. We could be looking to take responsibility and feel like we have a purpose in life. So having those conversations around ritual, I think, really allow our members to dive a little bit deeper into what's the difference between brotherhood and friendship.
That's really interesting, Jason, because one of the things that I've heard, certainly in the 6 months that I've been here, is actually from a number of people. In fact, a number of our fairly senior folks. I don't want to say a dismissal of ritual, but a downplaying of the importance of ritual, particularly from the perspective of university, right? Universities are looking for us, in fact, all Greek organizations to really, step up and demonstrate, a difference between being a Greek person versus just a regular student, leadership, community service, participation in Greek and university life, and student boards and student councils and things like that. And that, every organization has their own ritual, and that's all well and good, but the universities are really looking for a lot more than that. And what I'm hearing you say is that what binds us together as an organization is in fact the ritual, and that is the foundation upon which we will build as we start to grow as an organization into these greater leadership roles, community service roles, working on campus, etc. Is that basically what your thought was?
Yeah, and coming from the campus perspective before joining the staff, the reason why I think I buy into fraternity and sorority life so quickly is because I know everyone does have a ritual. They're going to be different. 99% of them are secret, but I know that there's something that ties them together that's bigger than they are as an individual. That lets me know that they can buy into community, and what does that mean? Whether that's Greek community, whether that's community service, whether that's philanthropic donations, whether that's leading a community. There's something bigger than themselves that they believe in. And if fraternity and sorority letters are tied to that, I think it's a powerful experience.
Yeah, I mean,
Marc, you were shaking your head too.
I was going to say, the truth is, and I use this story all the time. Back when I was an undergraduate, so it's almost 25 years ago now, I went to the precursor of what is AFLV and went to listen to a breakout session about ritual. And this guy named Ed King, he's a Sigma Chi, he used to be the dean of students at Bradley, huge in the Greek world back then, talked about the fact is we all do pretty much the same things. We might have skulls or nothing or robes or lamps or circles, whatever it is, but we're all in Greek life, we're all trying to say the same things. Be good people, study hard, treat both your own gender and the opposite gender with respect and honor, and live to this. And he asked someone out loud, why don't we tell people about our rituals? And the answer was because if we let people see them, then people we'd be forced to actually live by them every day. And when someone didn't, they could hold that book up and say, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, we're now throwing you off campus. But Jason's right. Ritual is the most important thing that we do, because it's not even that it ties us to each other as chapter brothers, but it ties Marc Guidi and Marc Dumas together. We've gone through the same thing. It might have been 10 years apart, but we've gone through the same thing. We can talk about it from not from just a machinations of what did you do differently in your chapter room to make ritual, but we can talk about the words and how they have value, and how something that was written 100 and some odd years ago still has the same amount of value, and how it's important in today's society. Because a lot of times we don't talk about things like honor. We don't talk about things like meet your adversary in the open. We use these kind of platitudes as kind of like these cute little things when we're being pithy with each other sometimes. But the truth is, they all make sense. It really does mean something to meet your adversary in the open. Pay your bills. Don't be a drunken fool. All these things all hold true.
That's right. Yep, I think that's a great point. Mandi, again, you work for a different fraternal organization, and you were a member of a sorority. What Marc and Jason were just talking about, does that ring true from Beta's perspective, from what you observed? Obviously, you don't know their ritual, but do you see them living similarly? And then from your sorority experience, I know Tri-Sig's got a ritual. I don't know what it is, obviously, but is there something similar there that rings true to you as well?
Yes, absolutely. I tell betas all the time that I feel like I know their ritual because I appreciate the way that they live it out. And it's very consistent. Whether I meet a beta from Washington State or I meet a beta from Atlanta, Georgia, I can tell there's a certain base level there. And I don't have to know their ritual to know that they are living out certain principles and parts within it, because I know the vernacular that they use, I know the language that they use, I know the things they prioritize, and I know their integrity, their character. So I can probably defer quite a bit about Beta's ritual without ever having gone to it, and I think that's what our founders hoped for. So many years ago when they were starting these organizations, I think they were hoping to edify one another, to encourage growth and learning outside of the classroom, and to make sure they could be the best men and women possible. And so I think it's huge when, as a non-member, I can witness that consistently about one one group. They have a deep respect for their ritual. So I think that's, the guys are hitting, Jason and Marc are hitting it right on the head.
Excellent, interesting. So Marc, going back to just kind of carrying on with that thought, particularly from your position as a chapter advisor. So when Brotherhood is done right, what does that look like? And how can advisors and other alumni support chapters in achieving that?
I mean, I've been thinking about that question since I saw it. What does Brotherhood done right look like? And I would say it looks seamless. You don't have to talk to them about, hey, you're brothers, you're supposed to do this. Hey, it just happens when it's done right. And I've been lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. I've had great years as a chapter advisor where my men at DePaul, with an L, not with a W, and at UIC have had great years, and I've had years where they've been kind of average. I'm lucky right now. You know, they're both really on an upswing, as saw at GAC, and so they kind of do it right. They kind of tell each other, these are the things that we need to get done. Here's our deadlines for getting them done. Here's the praise for when you get it done on time, and sometimes here's the consequence for not getting it done. And it's kind of, and I've kind of fostered that relationship with them as an advisor. And it's funny, it didn't come from Phi Psi, but it came from my father. My father, who didn't want me to join a fraternity, who didn't think it was a good idea when I helped start the colony, but he always used to put that in front of me. Nagging isn't the answer. The answer is, here's a task, here's a goal, here's what happens if you do well, here's what happens if you don't meet it. All those things are going to take place one way or the other, but that's how Brotherhood's done right. I mean, I look at my chapters at UIC. My chapter at UIC went from 16 to 40 in a year because they said we need more people to do this well. We're pulling ourselves too thin with only, you know, the 16 of us. Let's go find like-minded people. And at DePaul, it was the same thing. They're really proud of the idea that they're the biggest on campus. And I said, it's great to be biggest, but how do you become the best? And so for them, it's, okay, let's look at the things that we're failing at or not doing as well as we want to do and start really pushing on those while keeping up the same things that we're doing. And so it's working pretty well.
Great. No, that's good. Any other thoughts or comments regarding what does Brotherhood done right mean?
I'd love to share, Marc. We talk in Beta Theta Pi about moral courage, and that's everyday courage. So sometimes when we think about courage, we think about someone who has overcome cancer or someone who fought in a war. We think about very heroic courage. But in my opinion, if Brotherhood can be done right, it's the everyday moral courage when somebody has had too much to drink and you have the courage to say, maybe you should have a water, or maybe you should go home. Or someone says a racist, sexist, or homophobic joke and you have the courage to not laugh, but also to say, I don't care for that, and here's why. Also, you have the courage to say, I see a lot of potential in you, and I think you should run for this exact position. So it's just those everyday small transactions that make us better, and for me, that's what I think. That's what I think Brotherhood enacted or Sisterhood enacted every day looks like.
I would share a similar sentiment when I think about what does Brotherhood look like. And how do we know if it's working or not? I think about our value of respect and dignity for the well-being of others, right? So I'm going to respect you as a person, whether I agree with your views or not, but I'm also going to care about you as a person. So do I care about who you are, what you're passionate about, what you want to do later? Are you getting home safe at night? Right? So the respect and well-being for others, I think, is such an important value of Brotherhood because I think it's the essential component of just caring for others.
Got it. Well, and Jason, to kind of carry on with that thought, similarly, when you think about a healthy brotherhood, similar to Brotherhood done right, but a really healthy brotherhood, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's an interesting question when we think about health and wellness and health and well-being and what does that look like. I think we know from personal experience And from research, it'll say that it oftentimes is value congruence matched with organizational commitment versus personal integrity, and how do you live that out. So I think oftentimes when we think about a healthy brotherhood, I think about some of the health and wellness conversations that were happening around responsibility for each other, accountability, are we keeping everybody safe at our events, whether that's a guest or the person sitting next to you in your chapter meeting. Are you willing to dive into those really difficult conversations that are sometimes hard to have? Talking within a brotherhood about sexual assault, that's a safe place to talk about that, because those are people who should be like-minded with you, who carry the same values as you, and you can really dive in and have those hard conversations. Again, responsibility, acceptance, right? So diversity of thought, diversity of people, diversity of mind. I think those are all parts of just what does healthy brotherhood mean. And I think it's appreciating those differences. You don't always have to agree with them, but you should appreciate what someone is saying and be willing to challenge them back and challenge their values. Personal integrity, right? When we think about the word integrity, it means do your values match your actions. So if you say you're about brotherhood, then you actually have to live that out. And sometimes that means having those hard conversations. Sometimes that means holding an older brother accountable. Sometimes that means holding an alumni brother accountable. And that's hard to do, but that's what healthy brotherhood really looks like.
So it's interesting. I'd be curious on anybody's perspective on this. You know, when I was initiated in '84, and so it kind of came through my fraternity life in the mid to late '80s. And I remember at our chapter we did used to have those conversations, and as much grief as we used to heap on each other as members of the fraternity and fellow brothers, there was this underlying respect and caring that while I may give you a lot of grief, I'm not going to force you to drink, for example. If you really don't want to drink tonight for whatever reason, I'm not going to make you drink. I may tease you a little bit, but I'm not going to, it's not going to be unrelenting, right? Same thing with you know, with dates and guests. You know, it's like I may tease you for who you bring a little bit, but we're still going to be respectful to our guests and treat them, you know, and treat them well. That was the environment that I came up in. Do you know, obviously things have changed over the last 30 years. Do you believe that in the current generation that it's easier or harder to have those types of conversations, and why? Anybody?
I'll go. I think it's certainly harder. Our students are millennials and Generation Z. They are connected to 5 or more screens at once. 5 to 7 is what the research says. So they're connected in different mediums, applications, all those types of things, and they're used to instant gratification. They're used to chasing a high, a virtual high. And they're not used to those uncomfortable conversations. And so, and if they do have an uncomfortable conversation, they will defer to having it online rather than in person. So there's a lot of things that are great about millennials and Generation Z students. They're more entrepreneurial. They have great courage. Think they can do and hope to do great things in their careers. All of those things are great. But when it comes to conflict and accountability, which are such crucial parts of living the ritual and brotherhood, that they're predisposed to do it in the wrong way. The most effective way to do any of those things is to sit down in a non-confrontational place and to express, when you did this, it made me feel this, or it made me question your commitment to our ritual, or however you want to couch that or say that. But it's not effective in words thrown on a keyboard, and I think that's the biggest challenge we have right now is creating space, helping students to practice those things and to be more comfortable with that, because they're not predisposed to it now.
So Marc, you recently said, I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree. As a millennial myself, I think we're oftentimes stereotyped as being selfish. And I think sometimes, right, when we do something nice for somebody, it's not always about the other person. It's about personal gratification. Like, we feel good doing something for somebody else. Not that that other person is happy, but we feel happy that we feel appreciated. So I think oftentimes, again, it's the same thing with those difficult conversations. That's not going to feel good to us, so I don't want to do it. Or I don't want to joke around with somebody because I might take it the wrong way, and then people aren't going to think I'm a good person and funny. So I think, again, it's that personal gratification, that it's not always about the other person, it's about how are we going to feel after, and I think a lot of decisions are based off from that feeling.
Hold on. I lost my sound. Hold on.
Marc, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to unmute me. I'm trying to figure it out now. Hold on.
Actually,
I was muted.
you're fine.
That was
Never mind.
me.
There
Sorry.
we go.
Ah, there it is. Okay.
Sorry, that was my bad. See? Technology.
I was like, you said something, but what did you say?
Yeah, so what I was going to say, Marc, is that I was going to let you respond to the topic as well. But I also wanted to ask you, you'd said earlier that you're blessed right now with your 2 chapters are actually on an upswing and doing well. I'm sure those young men are faced with similar challenges that Mandi and Jason just described. So how do you as an advisor help these young men or coach these young men through what could be very uncomfortable and an unfamiliar territory when, as Mandi said, they're usually glued to their phones, to actually sit down face to face and do something that you or I just, I don't want to paint you as an age, but just from a generational side, are probably more accustomed to say, hey, if I've got a problem with you, Marc, I'm just going to sit down with you and say, hey, this didn't feel good, and we're just going to have a conversation about it. How do you as an advisor help young men navigate that and become more comfortable having those crucial conversations?
Well, I think am I back on? All right.
You're good.
All right, here we go. Perfect. So here we go. So what I tend to do with them is, and what Mandi and what Jason said is true, they are totally attached to their devices. They, for the longest time, they really don't understand that tone doesn't convey in a text message or in an email. And so what I try to do with them is, especially with the officers, when they have an issue with somebody, and usually the one who has the most issue is the treasurer, right? Because he's the one who's saying, I need my money. So if we don't have the money, we can't survive. And he wants to send out text messages and emails telling people they haven't paid and what's going to happen. And I had to sit them all down and go, look, it's great to use text and GroupMe and WhatsApp and every other device possible to make that work. But the truth is, when someone's not paying, there's a disconnect there. You need to sit down with them face to face. You need to talk to them about why they don't find value in what they're, because that's what it comes down to. Anytime someone's not doing something, usually it's they don't find a value in it. Okay, so let's figure out how to make that value show. One of the things I do with both of my officer groups is I make them, and I hate to use the word role play, but when they deal with each other and there's something wrong, they're not allowed to send each other a text message. They have to, at a minimum, send an email and ask for time to talk to each other and solve the problem either on the phone, which they really hate. They're like, why would I use this thing? Why would I use this device to actually talk to people? Or face to face. And we're getting better at it. I started it about 3 years ago, and at first it was awful. Like they were like, you can't make me, you can't tell me what to do. And I often, and Jason knows this about me, I often remind them, it's my chapter. The charter's on my wall in my house. I can do what I want. If you don't like it, you can leave, and we'll deal with that too. And so I have a blessing in that I use fear sometimes. I'm a large man from Chicago. A lot of my kids are from the suburbs. They don't see people like me. They're nervous, and so it works. But the truth is, it's all about getting them to communicate. And I tell them all the time, it's not just about communicating with each other. You're going to have to learn to communicate when you get a job. Your boss isn't going to always talk to you via text message. Your wife isn't, or your spouse isn't going to talk to you on email or WhatsApp. You're going to talk to each other. You can't tell someone I love you over a text and it has the same conveyance. You have to learn to be communicative. And so that's what happens.
That's great. Now, that's a really good perspective, Mark. I appreciate it. Your screen is shaking a bit. I don't know if the table that the computer's on is.
It's moving. Yeah, it's I'm an old man with an old computer, and my camera is trying to break on me. This is actually going to be good when I show my wife the video, so I can tell her to give me a new computer. It's going to be great.
There you go. Multi uses for the video.
Exactly.
Awesome. So, kind of one as we start to wrap up here a little bit. One last line of question I would be interested in, and Mark, you touched on this as you were talking. And Mandi, I'll probably start off with you on this one. And this goes to something I mentioned at the very beginning, and kind of the historical perspective of Greek life, particularly in the popular media, films, TV, and whatnot. I'm curious from your perspective, actually all of your perspectives, but I'll start with you, Mandi. Do you think this influences, or how do you think this influences universities, Greek life officers, Greek organizations themselves? How much does the media actually influence people that join fraternities or sororities to take actions that are actually counter to what they've committed to do in their ritual, right? It's like there's this kind of yin and yang here around we commit to something in a ritual, but yet then every popular media film or the typical summer college film that comes out always portrays Greeks, again, whether men or women, in a very stereotypical light, which, as I'm learning very quickly, is actually very, it's very 60s, 70s, 80s-ish, very much not reflective, for the most part, of what goes on today in the modern Greek organization. So I was curious if you think it influences university and Greek life as well as members, and then what can we do to counter some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Dr. Alan Berkowitz has a lot of really good things to say about this topic. Social norms and what we say, or the voices we allow into our fraternity and sorority experience, really do shape. So if we have access to have seen some of those movies, or we're watching the stories that are going on where complete Greek systems are being shut down in recent years on campuses, if that's the voice that we allow to power our minds, then we tend to create a space where we can perpetuate that. We have to almost change the social norm. We have to change the conversation. Our students are, I've worked with hundreds of student organizations in the last 9 years of my career, and students are really bad at writing press releases and putting out the good news. We're really good at gossiping and continuing to share the negative stuff because it's exciting, and we get our endorphins going, and we get a shot of dopamine when we do that. But it's not feeding our system at all. We have to start glorifying and talking about other things. A lot of our chapters have a portion of their chapter meeting where they glorify the shenanigans that happened the weekend before, and we do that in the name of let's laugh together and have fun and recognize that we're not perfect. But then again, we continue to glorify behavior that goes with the media stereotypes, where we should be glorifying a brother who got an A on a test, a brother who volunteered this weekend, a brother who helped his mom who just had surgery, and he went home for the weekend to take care of her. Those stories are happening, but we don't make a space to share that in a chapter meeting. Instead, we make a space to share the shenanigans and the funny things that happen when we drink too many ice waters, and then we continue to perpetuate our own stereotypes. So I think we have to start changing our stories and our language within our groups in order to change the story globally.
I think that's a great point, because again, if you look at it from the media's perspective as well, they're, with our new 24/7 news cycle, they're just looking for stories that are going to drive ratings, right? And to use your word, shenanigans tend to drive ratings a lot more than good deeds do. Unfortunately, that's just our culture. And so I would argue that not only do we have to change, but I think the bar is actually higher, because to get above the noise of all the other shenanigans and publicize the great community service that a chapter did this particular day for its community, or something that another group did to help wounded veterans, for example. Whatever it is, that's got to rise above, not only break through the stereotypical view of Greek life, but actually rise above the noise and the drive to get ratings to even hit the register. And even then, unfortunately, it'll probably get very little airplay because it's just not that sensationalistic. But I think you're right. That is the stuff that we should be focused on. Jason, Jason or Marc, any thoughts from your guys' perspective on this?
Yeah, I think particularly for our undergraduate brothers and our alumni, I think getting them to understand that the media is going to take a story and just run with it, and that's what's going to happen. Sadly, that's the reality we live in. They're going to hear about one chapter or part of one organization did this, and we're going to stereotype us all together. And when I find myself having conversations with our undergraduates, the first thing they'll say is, that's not us. And the first thing I have to say back to them is, prove it. So I think Mandi's exactly right, is to get the fraternal movement moving forward, we have to highlight the positive things. We have to not glorify the negative things. And if there is a negative thing that happens, how are you reacting to that? You can't control how other people are going to react, you can control how you react. So I think encouraging them to act swiftly and act with integrity when a negative thing happens. But when the positive thing happens, you need to run with that, and you need to show everyone that this is what we're about. It could be the smallest thing, but that's what people are going to grab onto, particularly in the local community. They want to see tangible things that our brothers are doing, and they don't want to just see the solo cups on the lawn the next day. So we have to get out there, we have to be active, we have to show people that it's a stereotype. If you don't want to be like that, then prove that you're not like that.
Yeah, I would agree with Jason. They often scream and holler that they're not. That's not them. We had, as you well know, we had a little issue this last year, and we all had to deal with that. And they go, well, that's not us. Well, I go, well, great, we're not monolithic. So show the world that we're not. Show the world that we're different. Don't tell me. I already know. Tell everybody else, and don't just tell them. Show them, because telling them means nothing to them. In this day and age of instant gratification, if you go and show somebody, you go show a community, a fraternity and sorority life community, that you're different than what they expect of you, great things happen. Amazing things happen. You watch your numbers grow. You watch your grades get better, because then people start looking at you and saying, well, if they can do it, so can we. I also tell my undergraduates, our undergraduates, that a rising boat helps all ships. If you do the right things, then everyone will start doing the right things, because they want to be like you. They want to be better. No one joins an organization. No one joins anything trying to be mediocre. Well, we hope not, at least. And so because of that, that's how we actually get to good. That's how we get from good to great. That's how we get from great to grand chapter. Or whatever Beta calls it, or whatever Sigma Chi calls it. These chapters that are on these campuses that are doing well because they're getting competition. And that's what we have to start doing.
So as we start to think about this, maybe any thoughts or parting words of wisdom to any of our undergraduates who will watch this, hopefully. Jason, from a training perspective, and Mandi kind of as well, because I know you do similar things for Beta, how can we encourage, coach, mentor, our undergraduate brothers to actually not only live this healthy brotherhood, but do it not only in school but throughout their life and in the workplace and with their families, and really carry this forward? How do we create that habit when they're young men and undergraduates, so that they carry it forward with them their entire lives?
Yeah, and I think it actually starts at our trainings and programs, actually. I think too often in fraternity and sorority life, we can see somebody in letters and we don't automatically connect with them, or we'll go to a program and there'll be 100 other Phi Psis there, but because you're not a Phi Psi from New York, I don't connect with you. And I think I think it's taking it that step further of, again, that shared experience, that shared ritual. You're my brother regardless. I might not know your name, but I know who you are, right? There's some part of you that I definitely know. So I even think that it starts at our programs of, if there's 100 of you there, then you should leave with 100 brothers at the same time, not show up and feel like you're alone. And I think if we can start doing that with people who might be strangers to us, I think that will start impacting how we view everyone else in our lives. Whether they are a Phi Psi and we share that brotherhood, or how are we treating other people with respect and dignity. So in the workplace, right, if you can already go in with the mentality of, you might be a stranger to me, but I'm going to treat you with respect, because that's at the core of brotherhood, and that's who I am as a brother, I think it'll start impacting everything else.
I really loved both Marc and Jason's points about making someone better and choosing selflessness over a self-gratifying feeling. If we could all focus in members of fraternities and sororities to make someone better, then we can assume that someone else is going to focus on making me better, and all together we would elevate brotherhood and sisterhood, accountability, all of these things we've been talking about today. But if everyone could just take the lens of, I'm going to make someone better, and assume that someone else is going to do that for you, I think we could fix a lot of problems in fraternity and sorority life.
My piece of advice, or the last thing I would say about it, is it's simple. You know, I tell my undergrads all the time, go to events. Don't just go to our things that we plan. Go to things that other groups do. Don't be afraid to copy what they've done and repeat it over and over again, because it's working. Don't be afraid to go. Jason talked about, you know, going to a national event or a local event or a training event. I've been to our convention since I was a young colony member in 1992. Some of my best friends in the world are Phi Psis from across the country, because we shared the same values. It's not just about what happens at my chapter, it's what happens everywhere. You know, I have friends in the fraternity and sorority world who are betas or sigma chis or alpha phi alphas, or I'm the only member of my family who's not an alpha, and they look at me funny, and I tell them we believe the same things, we just show them differently. You know, we have different colors, but everything's the same if you think about it. And but you have to learn to be selfless. It's hard. It's amazingly hard, and it's not because they're millennials or anything like that. It's just hard. We're pre-wired since we're babies to not be selfless. I want milk now. It's that easy. You know, it's hard to teach yourself, I have to worry about someone else in order for me to get to where I need to be. Once we do that on a large scale, the fraternity and sorority movement can move mountains. We've done it before. No sense we can't do it again.
Great points. Great points. Well, thank you all for being with us. Again, Mandi Dilling, Director of Education Leadership at Beta Theta Pi, Jason Allen, Phi Psi's Director of Member Development, and Marc Dumas, Phi Psi Chapter Advisor at DePaul and UIC. Thank you guys very much for spending a few minutes with us this morning. We'll get all this pulled together and get it posted, and I'm sure folks will really appreciate your insights and wisdom on what does brotherhood mean to you. So thank you guys, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Marc.